Australian bushland is a home for wildlife. And for almost 100 years, Clonbinane has been a home for the Jowett family. And throughout the late 1800s, from this veranda, the family has witnessed the growth of pastoral and farming activities. And over there in the hills, they saw and heard the fever of gold mining and timber cutting. This was the site of the old Comet Mill, owned by the Australian Seasoned Timber Company. In the late 1890s, this whole region was alive with the activity of man. Trees were felled, and about 30 kilometres of railway was constructed to haul logs from felling sites to mills. Today, there aren't many visual signs left, but to the careful observer, there are clues. This track winds its way through the hills of Clonbinane. Now, it could be just a track, but to the careful observer, we notice a constant width all the way along. If we follow it, we can find other clues. The remnants of what was once a sturdy bridge, sturdy enough to support even a train. Visual signs go together to give us clues. The clues paint a picture of man's past activities. The cleared slopes left by miners, pastures, some even now being reclaimed by natural forests. The whole process, mining, farming, timber milling, changed for a time the natural environment. But these new visitors must have been seen as rude intruders to the animals living in the plains, creeks and hillsides. Signs of man are quite obvious, but can we piece together the puzzle of animal life in this area? What adjustments have the animals had to make to this remodelling of their environment? Dr. David Smith is a puzzle solver. As a professional zoologist, he has a passionate interest in increasing our understanding of the inner workings of the animal world. Today at Clonbinane, Smithy and some friends are setting off on a mini expedition. Their objective? To search out signs, clues that may piece together an overall picture.
Oh, that's a steep hill. Sore back? I got sore feet. Oh. Well, I reckon this is a pretty good place to crop.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I'm weary. That was hard going.
I'll tell you now, do the rest.
Well, this track here was built over the old railway that was used to haul timber through the area in the old days. And this dam's been here for a while, I guess. Around this area, we'll see a few more clues. Look, just here, there's some droppings. Could be wombat droppings. Let's go and have a look. Look over here, on the edge of this little cliff face here, there's some scrapings that have been made by some big animal, probably a wombat. And you can see it's pretty broad. It's been sort of broadly scraped out to about that kind of width.
You see how all the leaves are gone?
The leaves are gone, that's right, yeah, and there's some dung fragments here and some hair pieces. I think we're on the trail of something good here. Let's go and see if we can find where the wombats come from. Look, the trail goes over there. You can see it going up past that other tree.
Follow it?
Follow the leader. Off you go, Paul. You have to watch out for all sorts of other signs along the way. So we've got a few clues that we've seen here. We've got the scrapings on the tree, which they probably eat, and they also, I think they use it to line the burrow to make it warm and so on and cosy. We've got flies in the entrance, so he's obviously using this one. We've now got a stick across the entrance so we can see whether he's coming or going. And we'll come back tomorrow and see whether he's made an appearance overnight. It's pretty easy to see that when we first arrived at this location, we had very little evidence of animal life. We saw the dam, and then by careful observation and piecing together of clues and evidence, we've actually discovered quite a deal about the area and the inhabitants of this area, the wombats. Down the valley is a waterhole,
with the frontier of natural bushland. Beyond that, the hill country.
Hey, look at this. Some of the animals that we've seen around here are pretty camouflaged, but this thing is lit up like a neon tube. You know what that is?
I know.
Do you know what it is?
Caterpillar,
It's a caterpillar, yeah. It's an emperor gum caterpillar. It's beautiful. Little blue spots on the end there, and pink stripes down the side. Well, we'll leave him there, and we'll wander off down the hill.
This high ridge is the campsite, and it provides a good view of the entire area. But for Smithy, the interesting aspect is that waterhole.
Waterhole is obviously a focus for animal life in the area, and if we look carefully we'll see signs of the animals that have come in from the open grassland, and also animals that have come across from the forest about 300 metres back from the waterhole. Why don't you scour around the edge of the waterhole here and see if you can find some clues to the sorts of animals and plants that might be in the area. Here's a good sized hoof print from a cow that's come down to drink at the waterhole. You can see it's a cow print by the size and the gap there between the two halves of the foot. We'll come back tonight and have a look with strut lights and see what we can see. Oh, Rick, that's really bright. That light's really incredible. I'm quite dazzled. It's really confusing. Hunters, or supposed hunters, used to use this method to dazzle animals in the bush. You get a kangaroo to sit up in front of your rifle, doesn't know where he is, and you take an easy shot at him. It's not really my idea of sport. But would you turn that off, Rick? It's really hurting. Phew. What's that like? It's a bit weak, isn't it? Yeah. Probably better off with... Oh, it's okay. I suppose it's not a bad way of doing it. We've got a much better one here. This super duper one of mine is actually a sealed beam light, and it's really quite bright, as you can see. It's a very narrow beam, so it focuses to quite a narrow circle of light, and it's hooked up to this motorcycle battery. It's a nickel-cadmium battery, the sort of ones you can recharge. Yeah. So the thing to do when you've got it set up is to aim it at the animal or the area that you're looking at. Hopefully you'll find a possum up there, and you put the light right up close to your eye like this and peer over the top, and you'll see the reflections of their eyes coming straight back at you. Keep it that way, because this little tube here, this mysterious tube, is where the acid can run out of the battery and drip down here, and it'll miss your pants. Oh, you can see the plates through the side there. It's transparent. They're the nickel and cadmium plates that produce the charge inside there. And you've got to make sure it's filled up with distilled water to somewhere between those two lines. Tawny frogmouth. It's a kind of owl.
Big eyes.
Yeah, it's got beautiful big eyes for night hunting. It's one of the ones that's going to get those mice that ran out from the trees to that waterhole. See the curved beak?
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
It's all camouflaged.
Yeah, it's fantastically camouflaged. Yeah. Really superb. Gee, we're lucky to find that. I'll sing you a little song. You know that one by Cat Stevens? You ready the children play? Well, I think it's fine building jumbo planes, or taking a ride on a cosmic train. Switch on silent from a slot machine. You get what you want to if you want to. You can get anything. I know we've come a long way. We're changing day to day. Tell me, where do the children play? Cracked the sky, scrapers fill the air. Just go on building higher till there's no more room up there. Will you make us laugh? Will you make us cry? Will you tell us
us when to live, will you tell us when to die? I know we've come a long way, we're changing day to day. Tell me, where do the children play? I know we've come a long way, we're changing day to day. Tell me, where do the children play?
You know, I was just thinking about those hoof prints that we saw around the waterholes. Remember we saw those cows' hoof prints in the mud? Yeah, it just reminded me of a story about these incredible giant wombats that used to live around this area a while ago, about 10,000 years ago, in fact. Well, these ones were just huge. They're called diprotodons because they have these gigantic front teeth, just like a wombat, which is why they think they're related to wombats and perhaps were ancestors of the modern wombats. They were about as big as a rhinoceros, which is pretty enormous, you know, sort of 2 metres high, about 3 metres long. And they found the fossils of them mostly around waterholes, which is why I thought of them when we saw those footprints, because apparently they were trying to get out to the water in the middle of the waterhole and got stuck in the mud. And then they kind of just roll over and die in the mud. And then the fossilisation process goes on, you know, over thousands of years the bone is replaced with minerals from around the mud. Pretty interesting. I hope there aren't any around here tonight.
Yeah.
Just keep thinking of those big teeth, you know? Yeah, that's right.
In his exploitation of the area, man relied upon natural sources of water. The miners needed water for sluicing gold, and the sawmillers for steam-driven machinery. And everyone, including the animal inhabitants, needed drinking water. They diverted creeks and built dams. Dams changed the whole course of river life. Downstream, the dwindling water supply makes life difficult for all creatures. Upstream, it creates a new and concentrated centre of animal life.
What a fantastic find. We've come out here in the bush to look for crayfish, and what have we found but a giant crayfish under this rock here. So Paul, my helper, is going to give me a demonstration of how to catch this crayfish in his net. Now, it's quite a big one, so Paul's a bit frightened. Here we go.
I got him.
There you go. Got him. That's fantastic. Oh, he's a big one. Now you want to get him on the back of his body, do you?
You move back.
Okay.
And we can get him over there so it'll be all right.
Righto. Terrific. There's quite a few. There must be about 5 or 6 young ones attached to the underside of the telson, or the tail piece here. There's one. Trying to bite me, actually, but unfortunately it's got very small claws. I've got another crayfish for you here. Oh, you're up to the stage of weighing this one, are you?
Yep.
Okay, so what does this one weigh?
It's more than 20. It's less than 30.
The first principle of scientific investigation is to make accurate measurements. So you're moving along the 1 gram
Yep.
scale now. Looks like
24.
24 grams, okay.
Yep.
So Paul writes this down in his book. Second principle of scientific investigation is to take accurate notes of everything you do, even if you're in the field. Fine. So what happens next?
First we'll dry the head.
Just to get the water off,
Yep, just
so that
the
the varnish will stick to the shell.
And we'll put white dot on its head and the middle.
This is a sort of magic code, is it, so that you
So you can
know
catch
which
it.
one's which? Have you done similar experiments at school with these crayfish? Does the varnish stay on well underwater?
Yeah, fades away a bit.
Okay, well let's put him back in the water before he gets too dry.
Yep.
There's 2 common sorts of freshwater crayfish in this kind of creek. We've got the smooth crayfish, this one here, which has got a very smooth carapace or shell, and next to it here I've got this little spiky crayfish, which can grow to an even larger size than the yabby. We've looked at hillsides, open plains, waterholes and some small streams. When we visited the Melbourne Zoo, we gained a lot of clues about the lifestyles of the various animals that we've seen here in the bush. We also got pretty close to some other river dwellers that I'm pretty pleased are not living in this stream. Wow, hey, that's pretty frightening, isn't it? These crocs are being fed dead rats. Normally the croc has to catch its own prey. They're masters of stealth. They lurk at the water surface and lazily approach the prey. Only when they get within striking distance will he exert himself with a single powerful lunge.
Don't the crocodiles twist when they're eating their food?
They do tend to grab it and just drag it back under the water and drown it, and they kind of roll around in their chair. But they basically try and kill it by suffocation or drowning. Occasionally our observation can involve strange and sometimes grisly sights. Ecologists talk about predator-prey relationships, and this highfalutin term simply means one animal gets eaten by another. This is a beautiful snake, I reckon one of the most beautiful snakes in the world. It's a corn snake from the US. Of course, with Australian snakes you have to be a little bit more careful than this because you're never quite sure when you're going to find a venomous one. Did you get a good hold of it? There you go. It feels good.
Yes.
Does it feel the way you expect it to feel?
Not really. I expected it to feel slimy and everything. His tail was almost identical to his head. I don't know how I can tell the difference, except for the tongue sticking out. Look at the colour of his tongue. It's blue. Yeah. Hello. Hello. Well, it's quite a sizable wombat, isn't it? This one. This is old Sasha. Hiya, Sash. She's got a very broad, stout head, hasn't she? Yeah. Really solid. Little beady eyes. A nice pair of teeth. You've got nice teeth for chomping grass and chomping fingers too if you're not careful. I guess the thing to notice most is these big claws. See the claws here? And strong. You feel the muscles around her shoulders. Yeah. They're really powerful. What do you reckon that's for? Digging. The Latin word for pouch is marsupium, and the possession of a pouch links a whole group of fascinating primitive mammals, some of which are only found in Australia. There's the cuscus, the Tasmanian devil, and gorgeous little antechinus, and unfortunately also the extinct Tasmanian tiger. In some marsupials, such as wombats and koalas, the pouch opens backwards so it won't fill up with junk. In the kangaroo, it opens upwards, for obvious reasons. So we've got eyes, not super well developed eyes, but probably a fairly good sense of smell, good sense of hearing, powerful shoulders as we've said, and good claws. The Melbourne Zoo is beautiful. It's also a very useful place for us to visit. Old-style zoos were kind of fun parks. But these days people realise that zoos have got some pretty important tasks to perform. As we've seen already, we've been able to observe some very unusual animals. Also some animals that would be too shy to observe directly in the bush. Perhaps more importantly, zoos are breeding animals that are in danger of becoming extinct. In a sense, the whole country is a kind of zoo, and we should see ourselves as the zookeepers.
forest environment gives a feeling of solitude and timelessness. These natural resources, national parks and reserves, have to be constantly conserved. They cannot be taken for granted. Even a forest like this one can be affected by sudden and dramatic change. To our surprise, while one side of the forest in the south rested in calm and sunshine, the pasture lands in the north had exploded into flame. A huge fire had raced through the grasslands, coming very close to the homestead itself. It was a frightening and unexpected demonstration by nature of a force that continues to be part of life in a dry continent. Fire takes a rapid toll of the environment, livestock and even human life. At first sight there are not many benefits to be seen, particularly in the man-made environments, pastures, crops, open fields like this one. But in the natural environment, this phenomenon, despite its immediate impact, can produce some long-term benefits. Some plants actually require the heat generated by fire to complete their life cycles. Fire can also clear the understory of natural forest. This enables the regrowth, the regeneration of a greater variety of plant life. So fire can help to maintain diversity, and that's the key to success in the game of evolution. But for the firefighters and the settlers in Clonbinane Valley, this man-made fire is as tragic as it is unnecessary.
The area around Clonbinane has been a rich and generous environment for observation. In view of the fate of other areas, it's lucky now to be a reserve, Mount Disappointment State Forest. Throughout Australia, there are many other fragile preserves of nature: high alpine, river valley, coral reef, desert, even suburban backyard. For Smithy's friends, it's been a busy 2 days. For his friends in the hills, the visit has been vastly different to that paid by Miner and Miller years ago. And for everybody, it's been a chance to learn skills of observation, skills that grow from curiosity. In the end, we know more about the world around us, our inheritance, the world that belongs to you.